enormously popular illustrator of the early 1900s. Leyendeckers' rendering of clothing and material provided a great example of how to add detail to a character while keeping the clean, sharp silhouette shapes that were key to our class identification. We used normal maps to craft folds of clothing, which provided a fine level of detail when seen up close, without detracting from color values, meant to draw the player's eyes to the all-important weaponry.
Characters are the most important piece of art in a multiplayer game, so that is where we spent most of our effort. We developed a read hierarchy for player models, prioritizing the information that players needed to be able to read merely by looking at the model. Our hierarchy was this: first, what team they're on; second, what class they're playing; and third, what weapon they're wielding. Team readability was addressed by adopting an overall color palette for each team, picking warm colors for red and cool colors for blue. Class readability was addressed through the character's silhouette. Unique silhouette and animation shapes are more identifiable at far distances and across a broader range of light levels than any amount of other visual detail on the model. Finally, the weapon was highlighted through the textures. The areas of highest contrast, which attract players' eyes, are all focused around the chest area of our character models, right where they hold the weapon. In addition, the subtle gradient from darkness around the character's feet to the bright areas around the chest also helps draw the player's eyes to the weapons.
Player classes form the backbone of Team Fortress 2's gameplay. There are a bunch of reasons why they're a useful design tool. A class is a bottled-up experience designed to be unique relative to the other classes in the game. A player who's getting tired of one class can switch to another class and get a fresh experience. They allow us to cater to players with a variety of different skills and desires. Beginning and advanced players can have fun together. Cautious, cerebral thinkers, strategic defenders, and twitch-firing adrenaline junkies can all find their niche. Team Fortress 2's class design decisions enable us to have a larger number of player abilities in-game, while still keeping a single player's decisions down to a manageable level.
We first showed Team Fortress 2 at E3 in 1999, and here we are in 2007, so what took us so long? The short answer is that it took us this long to make something that we were happy with. The long answer requires a look at our development process. At its core is the assumption that we don't really know ahead of time what will be fun. We know what's been fun in the past, but if we've got 3 ideas on the table, we really can't say for sure which one will be the most fun when they're done. So we've focused on developing a repeatable process that we'll find out. It's based on a cycle of constant iteration, where evaluation is done by watching as many people play the game as possible. In developing TF2, we tried out many features, a few of which made it into the final product, but most of which were cut. For example, our initial versions of TF2 were focused on trying to build a game around the concept of a commander, a single player who had a real-time strategy view of the battlefield. He would be responsible for building structures and providing a unifying strategy for the team. But there were significant design challenges involved. For instance, how do we design the game such that the commander can have fun and at the same time ensure that the players down on the ground can have fun? How do we ensure that the players and the commander value the output of each other? How do we ensure that the game is still fun if you have a terrible commander, or conversely, if you're a great commander with a terrible team? We spent many months working on these and other issues, and never really reached a point where we were satisfied. In addition, our game had become overly complex, due to our attempts to add a strategy layer deep enough to warrant the addition of the commander in the first place. In the end, we made the hard decision to remove him from the game and moved on.
Critical hits are one of the features that resulted from our focus on pacing. The critical hit system attempts to slightly influence the highs and lows of the game by increasing the chance of a critical hit based upon the player's recent performance. In summary, the better you're doing, the more likely you'll continue to do well. This helps create those rare high moments where a single player goes on a rampage and gets 3 or 4 kills in rapid succession.
One of the main changes between Team Fortress Classic and Team Fortress 2 was the removal of thrown grenades. Most classes could carry a standard hand grenade along with a secondary grenade, tied more closely to the class. Team Fortress 2's focus on unique class roles led us to notice that the standard hand grenade was a more powerful combat decider than some of the primary weapons. This made the classes more similar in combat, not a desired effect. In addition, when we look at some of the Team Fortress Classic's map stalemates, they often resulted from large amounts of grenade spam. 2 cases were particularly problematic. That of players throwing grenades repeatedly through doorways, hoping to kill an enemy who might be there, and players on the verge of death throwing all their grenades in rapid succession, hoping to get a kill after they die. Removing standard hand grenades made the game more fun almost immediately, especially for new players who were often confused as to why they die, when a grenade went off at their feet. When we examined the class-specific grenades, we found similar problems. Eliminating them from playtests gave us yet another boost in making the game more fun. Once we decided on removal, we analyzed each class to see what capabilities might have been lost as a result of the decision. In some cases, we added other capabilities, where we felt a class had lost the ability to make some interesting decisions related to a special grenade type.
So late in the project, while other parts of the game were being finished up, we found ourselves with some time left over for extra animation. There were several ideas on the table, including weapon-specific taunt animations. When evaluating a feature, we look at how many other features it connects to, and taunts were the clear winner. They play well with Killer Freeze Cam, adding to the relationship between the nemesis and his victim. They give us a highly visible place to show off our new facial animation technology, allowing the player to examine it from all angles. Finally, TF2's characters have a lot of personality, and taunts were the perfect way to show that personality through the animation and voice acting.
For Half-Life 2, we developed something called Response Rules, a system that lets us fine-tune the way characters speak lines of dialogue in response to game events that are not completely predictable. In Team Fortress 2, we extended response rules to the multiplayer environment for the first time. The response rule system works by listing speech concepts in a simple text file. The game code then makes characters attempt to speak when the rules or conditions defined in the text file are met in the game. For instance, when a player reloads his weapon, this signals the response rule system that now would be an appropriate time to speak a line about reloading. The response rule system checks the state of the world and matches it to a set of rules that determine the best line of dialogue to use for that speech concept. If the player's health is low, he may speak a different reloading line than if he's completely healthy. He could play a special line if he has killed more than 2 enemies in the last 20 seconds, another set of lines if he's underwater, and so on. Keeping dialogue and rules in script files gives the game's writers the ability to add speech to the game without needing any code support.
In our early discussions of rendering styles for the characters, we decided we wanted them to have a look that was illustrative or stylized, without going to the extremes of most toon shaders. We wanted softer lines for shading than was typical for this sort of rendering. So, we used the 2D texture to define the lighting on the characters, and at the point where light and dark meet, we added a hint of warmth to give it that burst of color at the transition. Once we'd achieved the right shading model, we added a rim trim to the characters so they would have a nice highlight around the edges of their silhouettes, which helps them to stand out from the surrounding 3D world.
The challenge of the particle system was to create effects that were fun and visually exciting, without being so over the top that no one could read their meaning in the game. In a typical match, there are so many effects on screen at the same time that the biggest danger is visual clutter. Therefore, the effects were refined to be cleaner and simpler. Those that were most important for gameplay were made easier to see, while those that were mainly eye candy were allowed to fall into the background.
With 9 classes of characters and so many weapons and unique abilities, one of our biggest challenges was exposing all these combinations to players without overwhelming them. Even the short list of essential information